We're talking about men losing fat over 40. And we're going to talk about basically the narrative I think a lot of guys have been hearing for a long time, and they think they're doing all the things, and they're working hard to do it at some level, but they're falling off. And I think it's worth addressing some points because, we're guilty of this, with the podcast and what we're putting out sort of like on Instagram or on social media or whatever. We're always talking about something, right? And the whole goal there is to just hopefully give perspective or bring some value or get people thinking a little bit differently about what they're doing. And, the fundamentals and the foundations never really change. So sometimes we're just trying to repackage what we've talked about, because the reason I'm motivated to do that and to continue to do these things is because we continually get the same questions and people are running into the same challenges. So yes, there's a lot of things to keep organized and be thinking about, but it's the getting off into the margins where people quickly fall. And a lot of this has to do with some very basic stuff, but at the same time, like, they have worked hard and they have listened, not just to us, but they're getting the information from a lot of people. And I think most people, especially as you're entering into, let's say your 40s and getting near your or above your 50s, you figured a few things out. At this point, you're not the same dude you were when you were 25. And the things that you did then are not necessarily what you can do now. Some guys are still fighting that and they're still pushing. And I still push, right? But I also know what my limitations are, right? And getting through those crusty layers. Like, sometimes that crust is just a little thick, and it's
a little hardened. Yeah.
Yeah. It limits some of the things I can do. But what it never does is it never changes the approach to the basics. And particularly when it comes to fat loss, weight loss, or staying kind of or maintaining a healthy weight. This is the thing where I think the most confusion lies. And the thing I think most guys struggle with over the age of 40, because of all the things that get piled on in life, the things they're trying to balance now. They've discovered some things. They're definitely more aware of their health. They're more aware of what they need to be doing with their nutrition and their workout programs, and they're getting all this information from all these places. And it can get like, I think I'm doing it right, but I'm still not getting the result that I want, which is to lean up. I may be building some muscle, but my clothes are fitting a little bit differently, but I'm still holding on to some of this fluff. I can't seem to get rid of it. And dude, I'm doing the stuff. Like, I'm doing all the things. So I want to talk about that.
Well, and I think kind of the common theme about everything, all of our points today is, with the age of information now, there's almost more confusion that we miss some of the nuance. So I think, like you said, a lot of these individuals know, here's the basic things I should be doing, and they're doing those things. But what gets lost in the sauce a little bit is there is some nuance of the application. Like, more is not always better, quality is better. And that's kind of the common theme with all of our points for today, is there is nuance in things that a lot of people miss and they get confused by. And that's why they get frustrated when they're not getting these results that they want. So
I think one of those things that comes up right away is what's been beaten down people's throats for a long time. And it's good because it's finally reached through. It's broken through the crust, on a lot of levels. And that is, you got to eat enough.
Breached the crust.
If you're looking to lose weight, right, you're looking to lose body fat, and you want to lean up, you want to look a little bit better naked, you got to eat enough protein, right? You got to eat enough protein. And what is that? The general recommendation, and there's not a lot of argument about this, is you should be eating somewhere near a gram per pound of your goal body weight, whatever that is. Can we get agreement on that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think most people are not going to argue that. However, a lot of people are. And so again, that's some of the confusion we're talking about. But if we can agree that a really healthy place to be in terms of fulfilling your needs in order to get through the day, maintain muscle mass, build muscle mass, and then ultimately lose weight/fat, which aren't the same thing, right? But in the larger context of the conversation, if we're looking to lose weight, most people want to lose fat, and they kind of get that, right? They're still looking at the scale a lot, which can be, it's not a true indicator of what may be happening on, under the hood, but they get that they should be eating enough protein. They've really worked hard to kind of do that. Now everything is like, I have protein powder in my cupboard. I have protein bars in my desk at work or in the truck or in the car or whatever.
I eat steak every night.
I eat steak now.
All the meat, all the eggs.
We're doing all that stuff. I recognize that, eating 4 or 5 eggs a day is not going to, increase my cholesterol levels, as long as I'm managing everything else. I get that. Because some of the myths have been busted. So they're eating enough protein, but they're still not getting what they want. And so you're eating enough protein, but you're still not eating enough calories.
Yeah.
And there's a couple things that play into that I don't think people realize. And I know they don't realize that because I've talked to them about it. And I have these conversations with people. I'm like, dude, you've ticked the protein box. That's good. But there are lots of other boxes for you to tick. And I don't want to confuse you, but let's talk about the total calories that you're eating. And they don't know what those are. Mm-hmm. And again, we've talked a lot about tracking and the importance of doing that to gain awareness, and that you don't have to do that forever, but it's good to recheck in to kind of see where you're at. And certainly if you have a specific target that you're trying to reach on the scale or with a body composition analysis or something like that, these things are important and there's nuance in that. But you're eating enough protein, but you're still under eating total calories.
Man, there's a specific client that I can think of as the epitome of this right now. His goals are, he's had a good transformation. His goals are maybe slightly different, but he's a client that we both share that you've worked with for a while. He like kind of epitome of this. He learned so much. He rewired all those old habits to where he eats protein, but now he really struggles actually to get enough calories in. You know,
I know who you're referencing, and the protein intake is certainly not an issue. I've actually had to tell that individual, like, you can actually dial it back a little bit.
You don't need 300 grams.
For at your size, you can dial back the protein a little bit. And I think it's, in my observation and the clients that I've worked with over the last few years, women tend to struggle with the protein thing more than men do, because men tend to eat more in general. And when you tell men, eat protein, they're like, all right, meat, like, let me get more of it. And that becomes somewhat of the hyperfixation. I think there's almost like a masculine hue to, like, I eat meat, and it's that's not a problem. Give me more of that. But it's been my observation that those men will be hitting their protein goal, and then they're also thinking along the same lines, that befalls everybody. Carbs make me fat. Cut the carbs. So when you're introducing some of the points that, there are these kind of general fundamentals. Okay, I need to be eating better. Well, what exactly does that mean? For most people, okay, maybe they got I need to eat more protein and I need to eat less carbs. It's always eat fewer carbs. And some people do need to eat fewer carbs, and they do need to eat fewer carbs from processed food sources. But I've seen men in particular swing too far in the direction of eating almost nothing but protein. Yeah. Like Scott said, their total caloric intake is not where it needs to be, and they find themselves feeling sluggish. Yeah. And that was actually that specific individual that you were referencing. At one point, he, in a session with me, he's like, I'm not really feeling that great. And I'm like, that's because you are smashing 3 protein shakes, a protein bar, a side of beef, like, you're 275 grams of protein, but then your total calorie intake is, 2,500, when this individual needs to be closer to 2,800 to 3,000. Yeah. And that's why you feel sluggish, because you're eating this massive amount of protein that's going to take a lot of energy for your body to digest, and you're not getting enough carbohydrates, and him in particular carbohydrates, but it could be fat as well, because some people still think fat makes me fat. And there you go. I call it the low energy diet. It's a protein only diet.
And I think that's even good to kind of go into the specifics with that of, like, if that individual is eating 275 grams of protein, they're barely getting over 1,000 calories just from that protein. So then if they're not eating enough carbs, and you're saying they need to get to 2,800, those calories have to come from somewhere. And so they're only getting that much amount of protein. They have to realize that they need to be incorporating those other kinds of calories, carbs and fats. And yes, like we've talked about, like, you may feel a little bit better on a little bit more fat, a little bit more carbs, and there is more interplay between those two things, but they are both vital, and you do need to be getting them both. So I think that's the big hit, is a lot of protein, a lot of food, but still, under calories.
And the meat tends to come with some fat. A lot of times the guys that fall into this trap, they're red meat eaters. They're not afraid of a fatty piece of meat. So the calories that they do consume, they tend to come from fat. So we're a little skewed in the direction of fat. Protein is high, fat is high, carbs are low. And there are a lot of people out there who will say, well, that's good. But that's just because you have a high protein and a high fat diet doesn't necessarily mean you're doing keto, and it's a good thing for you. So there's an imbalance there, essentially, in the macros.
Yeah, I think men find themselves in the like, what's the solution for this? What's the button that I need to push?
What's the procedure?
Yeah,
Let
exactly.
me run that direction.
Yeah, run that
as far as I
direction.
can
So
go.
they wind up, subscribing to a specific diet, camp, or tribe like carnivore or like keto as their answer. And conventionally, conventional wisdom will say that kind of makes sense based on all the things we've talked about. But the reality of that is that it leaves a lot on the table with regard to the conversation we just had. So again, looking for that easy button with like, okay, I got to get my protein in, and I need to keep my carbs low, right, in order to do this. And what's that answer? Well, carnivore makes a lot of sense. And look, I mean, I can see, and I'm hearing all these testimonials about people that have, particularly men that have moved into a carnivore type diet, and they had an immediate result or a very quick result. So there's a couple things there. One, when men move into any type of a dieting type of situation, when I say dieting, I mean subscribing to maybe a caloric deficit or one of these diet tribes, which in effect puts them in a caloric deficit, they generally have a quicker result. They are out of the gate a little faster than, say, women, right? And that's why their wives are pissed at them when all they have to do is, make to what their wives or whatever, girlfriends or whatever, think is a minor adjustment. They have a really good return on that investment, whatever that is. And that's just the nature of what you're dealing with as a man, right? From a hormone perspective, from a muscle mass perspective, that calorie burning machine on the back end, and how we process those calories and what our body does metabolically. So again, it makes sort of conventional sense to go like, yeah, that makes sense. I'll go to that because that puts me in the situation to do what I need to do, meet my caloric needs, and be in a calorie deficit. And when I do that, to your point, Stephen, I can choose meats that are higher in fat, right? Which are usually the tastier type of meats. When you start going to the red meat and you start stepping through the different levels of what that is versus getting a chicken breast, which is generally low in fat and isn't as tasty, and it needs some doctoring and, whatever else. It can be a little boring. I'll take a ribeye steak all day long, every day, and twice on Sunday, right, over that chicken breast. I will. But I also recognize like what that comes along with, which is, to your point, like it's higher fat. So I am onboarding more fat calories than I probably need if I'm doing that consistently, which I do not do, right? The other thing it is that fills me up. As I'm getting that fat with that protein, it's filling me up. So I'm feeling satisfied. I'm satiated. So it doesn't leave a lot of room for those mechanisms to say, look, you should be eating more, you need more. And the other thing about this is like you get that immediate satisfaction of like that fatty steak tastes delicious, like, and it makes me feel good kind of right out of the gate. But the long-term problem with that is if you're doing that consistently, we've already kind of talked about that, is people are undernourished to do the things that they need to do from a performance perspective, which we'll get into here in a minute, but also from, again, the caloric balance perspective to give them what they need in order to be productive.
And I think the last thing to trickle on with that too is I was actually even seeing a post about, when we have a high fat diet, especially an issue like in the carnivore diet is, let alone from a caloric standpoint, but a big miss a lot of times is the amount of fiber that the individual is getting. And there's even a post, a nutrition guy that we really like, Lane Norton, he made a post today about the action between, fiber and the health of the gut microbiome. And there's actually like an interplay communication of the gut microbiome and muscle tissue and like how that functions. So that's a big thing for like that calorie burning machine and like the function of the gut. And that's a really big miss when you're not eating any carbs, because that's where the fiber is going to be located. So I
don't need any fiber. I'm getting all this protein. I don't need vegetables and fruit.
It just runs right through me.
Just eating meat.
All right. So you're eating your protein, but you're still under eating the things you need to be eating in terms of total calories, in terms of a macronutrient profile, in order to be set up for effective longer term weight loss or maintenance. So I think the maintenance piece, once you reach that, is a little bit easier, but that's not where most people are starting, right? They're not starting there. So starting with that is not necessarily the best place to go. You could maybe more move to at certain times during the year towards more of a carnivore type eating pattern or keto type eating pattern to maybe pull off a couple of extra pounds or dig deeper into your deficit if that's where you're going as you're dialing back carbohydrate or fat or whatever else. But it's not the place to start. And if you start there, you haven't left yourself a lot of room to work, right? And there's not a lot of forgiveness there. Eventually, one way or another, especially if you're lifting weights and you're starting to build that muscle mass, that caloric need is going to increase. And what are you going to do? Just eat more protein? You could, but it's not the most effective thing for you to eat in terms of
Performance is going to suffer.
your performance will suffer, and ultimately so will your energy levels, your fat loss, and we could dig deeper into things like hormones. I don't like to go there because people want to blame those all the time. Like that's the reason I'm not doing it. We'll get to that later, but it can impact that if we're not more balanced. So again, the protein thing, you're hitting your protein, but you're still under eating and your macros are not balanced well to set yourself up for longer term success. You had some success out of the gate, got it. That's good, right? But now we're going to have to make some adjustments. So I wouldn't suggest people go in with like deciding like it's the carnivore diet I got to do or the keto diet I got to do. Can it get you to your, that's one of the benefits of doing something like that or one of those tribes is it gets you to that protein need faster or typically faster. So things to think about, like you're hitting your protein, but you're missing some other pieces going back to the nuance. Okay. Second place, or the second thing on the list for me is like, and I think most people understand this at this point, is that you got to lift weights, right? And so you're lifting weights, but you're leaving things on the table. And how does this work? So I think when guys return to the gym or they get into their workout routines, most males, in my experience, are they like that routine. They like that structure and they get very comfortable. And if you don't believe me, just go to the gym and go at the same time, every day or on the days that you go, and you'll see the same people in there. And what you'll invariably see, and I would put money on this, you're going to see guys doing exactly the same thing in a month, in 2 months, in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year as they were doing when you first walked in the door. So they're working into these routines and they're not giving themselves the stimulus and or the changing the variables in order to continue the process of, number one, build in, and it's more of a maintenance, right? We're not really building, and they kind of start to drift towards, let's just say, the same stuff all the time. And I don't know if for me, what you end up seeing is it's the same guy. When I talk about that individual or that avatar of that person, what are they doing every time you go in and see them in the gym? And they're doing this like 2-3 times a week. They're going, well, I'm hitting the same body part like I've been told. I'm going into the split where I could get more volume, right, by dividing up my chest workouts over 2 days a week instead of 1 day a week. I know I'm not doing the bro split anymore. I'm doing something where I'm hitting maybe chest on Monday and I'm hitting it again on Thursday or something like that. But what did you leave off the table in between? And I guess what I'm saying is particularly when guys get restarted, they get in and they have a little bit of a program going, whatever that is. And then some things start to fall off, tend to gravitate towards the things they like doing or where they're quote unquote seeing a result. Get on that bench press, get on that pull down or that lat pull down, and what happens? Start to fill out a little bit more. Start to see your strength go up. You can put more weight on the bar. You can put more weight on the stack. Dudes, typically, that's what they're chasing, and they keep chasing that. And while they're doing that, things are happening.
Kind of like what we were speaking with nutrition a second ago of you'll see some initial results just by taking action. I think a lot of people, like you were saying, where they initially fill out, like initial hypertrophy or gains in fitness, like you just kind of have to do work initially and you'll see some of that. But the theme of like continued success, which we talked about with the nutrition, of being able to have continued success with their programming, like there needs to be a comprehensive training program, a variable training program, a progressive training program. And I think that's where a lot of them miss. And they go in and they do the same things they did when they were in high school, and they go and they do, 4 chest exercises, and maybe they don't hardly do any back exercises. Maybe they train legs once a week and it's low effort, and I think that's for continued success. That's where a lot of the missing parts are. So
what we're talking about is like you're lifting weights, but your program sucks.
Yeah.
Right. It's just not well structured. It's not well organized. And even if it is, and you think you're doing, no, I got a program. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But are you doing the program in the manner that it's laid out, using, proper intensities, proper frequency of things? Because what's the first thing that's going to fall off when you, run into that schedule conflict during the week, or when you do, get sick or have that low energy day or whatever else. Like, are you going to skip chest day?
You're going to skip leg day.
You're never skipping chest day, right? You're skipping your deadlifts, you're skipping leg day, you're skipping the hard stuff. So what you end up gravitating towards is what's easy for you, right? Or what you like doing, or
Arm
what
farm.
You do well at.
the arm farm, right? So, and that's not to say that's not valuable, but again, what are you leaving off the table? So you're lifting weights, and maybe even you're lifting hard, right? You're training to or at or near failure, on the things that you're doing, but what are you doing? And are you doing everything that's inside that program? And I'm not even talking about like, are you going 5 days a week versus 6 days a week or 3 days a week? If you're going 3 days a week, are you hitting all the things that you should be hitting, or are you just kind of gravitating back toward and spending more time and more intensity in the areas that you like doing or feel comfortable or that you perceive are giving you the result that you think you're getting or you want to get? And how is that related back to what your overall goal was or is, which is fat loss or maintenance? And there's a pitfall there, and we see that happening a lot. And when that happens, and that's why you see the 45-year-old walking around that's wearing this medium shirt that's all chest and arms and nothing else, right? He has no middle back. He has no back at all, right? He has zero legs. He never wears shorts, right? Because he's skipping those other things. And while his perception is looking in the mirror with his medium shirt on, he looks great, right? And I'm not saying you don't look great. Maybe you do, right? For you, right? But there's some glaring, obvious things that start to show up over time as people continue to they get outside of, what was a well-structured program into what feels comfortable, what they like doing.
And for me as a coach, I always think about too, like, there's the aesthetic aspect of it, of what you're seeing in the mirror. But, at a certain point, if you're missing this comprehensive approach, that's where these chronic issues slowly start to build up. And I think one of the biggest things for this hardworking individual, like the guy we're kind of talking about, why they fall off is because, man, that shoulder is just continuing to get worse and worse and worse. And now I can't bench. Now, what do you do if you've been benching, twice a week? And I think that's when you're missing those nuances of the program. That doesn't necessarily A equals B for injury, but that's where those chronic issues start to kind of creep up on you if you're missing those pieces. So,
yeah, I think so. There's a couple things that kind of a combination of things is like, and I said what I said is you're lifting weights, but your program sucks. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's more you're lifting weights, but your execution sucks. So what are you doing inside the execution of your program? What are you missing? What are you leaving off? What do you knowingly and maybe unknowingly, what ends up disappearing there and what ends up getting added on?
Yeah.
The other part of that is the drifting to what you are comfortable with. And so that's more of like you maybe came out of the gate a little hard, right? And that's okay, right? But at 40, 45, 50 years old, like how hard is hard enough in order to get you down the road you need to, or you want to get to? And that would be obviously give your body the minimal effective dose in order to get the response that you're looking for. And again, going back to dudes, the more is better principle generally pops up. And especially when you start seeing a bit of a result. And again, dudes end up oftentimes see a result pretty quickly. And that result is something they have a connection to because maybe in the past they recognize, oh, my chest is coming back. My arms are coming back. I'm filling out my shirts a little bit better. And so it's more. I need to go harder. I need to go longer. I need to lift heavier, all that kind of stuff. And so when that happens, particularly as we're getting older and we're not as resilient, our tissue quality changes, right? Our hormone levels are changing a little bit. We have this other liability that we're bringing on in life or whatnot. You start winding up with these overuse things. You get a little bit uncomfortable. There's some discomfort associated with your workouts. I certainly understand what that feels like. And so you're looking for, okay, so I can't do my chest presses. Rather than doing more chest pressing, maybe what you'd need to be doing is more pulling, right? But instead of doing more pulling, you go, well, what's the chest exercise machine? What's the one that I can pick that allows me to do the thing I like to do, which is more chest pressing.
What can kind of stabilize me and how can I shortcut my way back to chest?
Right. So you got away from doing the basic bench press or the basic dumbbell chest presses or whatever else, and now you're doing a machine, or now you're just doing a fly, right? And, you know, a cable fly, because that allows you to kind of get your body in that position that doesn't hurt anymore. And so you're putting your efforts there where they probably should be put somewhere else. So again, it's two things. It's poor execution, and then it's also coming out of the gate so hard from the get-go and running with the, I'm getting it, this is working, I'm working. And then somehow in the back of that brain, it kind of disappears that there's other things I need to be doing in here in order to maintain what I'm, for the long term, what I'm trying to get done. And again, I think that's a trap. You know, a lot of older dudes fall into. It's, I can go to the gym, I can work out, I feel good, I'm ticking the box of lifting weights, but I'm also, there's a lot of other sub boxes within that outline of things you're supposed to be doing that you're not ticking. Again, a pitfall. So the next thing I would bring up is the sleep side of things. I need, by now, everybody, when I say everybody, it's a blanket statement, but I think most people understand how important sleep is. Yeah. I've said it a million times, I'll say it again. Just talk to a person, you know, who hasn't slept really well for about 2-3 nights in a row, and what kind of quality human is that, right? They're going to be less productive, right? Cognitively, they're not as sharp, right? They're probably going to have some mood swings.
Extra crust.
There's,
you know, I'm going to bring him right
that was
back.
Me, that was me this Tuesday. I was crusting. I was very crusty.
Any level of crust that was there is certainly going to be hardened or, you know, or whatever. So it just becomes a little saltier maybe at the same time. So
saltier crust.
So you're getting in bed and you're spending 6 to 8 hours in bed, but your sleep hygiene actually sucks. Yep. Yeah. Right. And so I think there's a lot of things that go into that, and how people fall into that trap. Like it's not consistent, right? You're, you know, okay, so 3-4 nights a week, you know, maybe even 5 nights a week, I'm going to bed at 10 p.m. and I'm up at 6, right? Or I'm up at 5. All right. So you're falling into the timing piece, right? But what's actually happening while you're sleeping, and are you getting good quality sleep?
Yeah. And that ties back to the getting out to too quick of a start. And then we start getting into this recovery debt. You're going hard, you're feeling good initially. You can get through that for a little bit, but on the backside, you're not sleeping well, you're not recovering well. That's going to put you at greater risk for some of these injuries, which maybe it's not overuse. Maybe it's even an acute injury if you're in the gym and you're just kind of spaced out because you're not sleeping very well. Yeah. I think men also tend to fall a little more into the like, I'll sleep when I die type of mentality, maybe a little more weekend warrior mentality, which lends itself to what you were just saying as far as the sleep schedule. You know, I'm on target. I go to bed early. I wake up early to get to work, you know, Monday through Friday. But then on the weekends, Friday night, Saturday night, I'm having multiple pops with the boys. I'm staying up late. I probably still wake up fairly early just because my body won't allow me to sleep in. So I'm not actually catching up. I'm getting even further behind. And now even if, you know, you're not having as many pops during the week, you're still in this growing recovery debt. And then the wheels start falling off a little bit. You start breaking down a little bit, and then maybe you start blaming your age or your hormones. I'm just tired because this is just where I'm at in my life. When in reality, if you just got more consistent sleep on a regular basis, some of these things wouldn't be arising.
Yeah, and what's the downstream effect of that when we're talking about fat loss and some of the things we talk about with the workouts? So interesting thing, like I'm glad you brought up like Friday nights. Like the weekend seems to like get erased. Like from the rest of the week, a lot of times it's not equated properly. Like,
it's not as structured, right?
Right. So like if I'm not sleeping well, here's a couple things to know. Like we know this through science. Like people that get less than 6 hours of sleep in a night will be less insulin resistant or less insulin sensitive. The next day. So in terms of how your body partitions those calories, where it puts them, what it's doing with those on the next day, you're already kind of in a little bit of a hole, and you can't get it back. Like it is what it is. Your body has to go through this process of recovering. There's the cognitive piece and what's going on in the brain, and how that again may play into your behaviors,
your food choices that day that you're tired, that day that you're hungover.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think everybody can relate. Like my weekend schedule from an eating perspective is much different during the weekends often than it is on, you know, during the week, because I don't have that same structure. Now maybe I do, but that structure may be even a little bit more intense. Like I got to get that yard work done. I got to get the kids to the soccer game, right? There's the chores I got to do around the house. There's the social thing I'm doing that night, or, or whatever else, whether it's with the kids or with the wife, with the girlfriend, or with the buddies or whatever else, and how that stuff stacks up in those 2 days during the week as compared to the other 5 days during the week. So again, going back to the sleep thing and the downstream effects of that, like the behavior stuff is where I see most people, finding the most trouble. If you're not getting enough sleep on Friday night, then you're probably not going to be you're not going to be recovering that on Saturday. And then you're into Sunday, right? And depending on what your activity looks like on Sunday, if let's say you fell off the workout wagon on Saturday, shit, I got to go punish myself today on Sunday. I got to get out and I got to go harder, right? But I'm undernourished because my eating schedule is off and my sleep schedule is off. So I'm feeling a little lethargic, and you are, like, your body just doesn't have the same energy it would typically have. You're kind of running yourself deeper into the hole. And it all starts with the consistency of that sleep, which then ultimately, again, impacts all these other things. So again, you're in bed 6 to 8 hours, but what's happening, right, during the time that you're in bed? What are the answers to this? We've talked about this before. We've done podcasts on sleep and sleep hygiene, but the important thing is this, I think. There's a lot of things you could be doing, but the most important thing you find is some consistency in that. And yes, and you should expect that even with the best consistency that you have, you're going to run into stuff that's going to throw you out of whack on occasion. So the more consistent you can be, the better set up you are to kind of get through that inconsistent night or that inconsistent day. And you'll know it when you're consistent. Like you'll wake up the next day and go, dude, I'm wrecked. Like you don't need your device on your wrist to tell you that. Like like there's some subjective feedback that you're feeling already. A little slower getting out of bed. I need that 2-3 extra cups of coffee, right, to seem to kind of pick me up here. Like I don't have the same appetite that I did, right? And then when you get to the gym, how are you overcoming that, or how are you kind of circumventing the things that you're feeling? Pre-workout,
yeah.
give me all the stim,
prop
right?
me up, yeah.
Right? And well, I think what a lot of dudes don't realize is, it's cool to take pre-workout and whatever, throw the scooper in your mouth and then chase it with water.
Dry scoop.
Oh, yeah.
Give me a break.
Stuff. The reality is,
Give
like,
me a
what are you
break.
really doing there? I mean, there's some benefits to that stuff for sure, but what is the use case that you're using it for? Are you using it to get through your workout today, or are you using it as an ergogenic aid to support,
To enhance it, yeah.
all the other things you're doing? And then again, you're doing that, it starts with a half a scoop and then it turns into a scoop and a half, right? And then how is that impacting your sleep patterns, later in the day? So, again, the quality of the sleep that you're getting absolutely impacts the rate of fat loss and the consistency of that fat loss over time, especially when stacked against all the other things that we already talked about. I mean, what else do we need to say about sleep that people probably think they're doing that maybe they're not doing?
Well, and I think that's a good thing to say, like the downstream effect of poor sleep impacts every other single point that we were talking about. And I think for me, for sleep, that was a big game changer, is the consistency around sleep, but the schedule as much as you can, but even the other things around that, like the ritual of sleep. What are you doing with things like your phone before sleep? Supplementation might not be the magic fix, but there's almost for me and my wife, like there's a routine with the supplements that we take before bed that almost puts me in this state of it's time to downregulate.
It's a cue.
So there is like the benefit of the things like I take magnesium every night, and I do notice an impact with that. But it's also like you said, it's like the cueing of downregulation and putting and all like the hygiene, the consistency, and controlling as many variables. What those variables are can be kind of individual. But I do think controlling those variables is a really big impact for that. So
yeah, I think in terms of the routine, the other thing to add in here, particularly with the 40-year-old plus type dudes, is again, a lot of these guys have kids, they have families or whatever. Yeah. And here's the thing, as compared to a lot of the other things, we talk about nutrition. Not everybody's eating quite the same. Kids might be eating very differently than you. Your spouse might be eating very differently than you. That's a little bit. And they might have their own ways of, or again, their own formula for how they're reaching their successes there. But man, if there's one thing you could do in your household to make everybody's life better and help you with your fat loss and your performance gains or maintenance, is getting everybody on a regular sleep schedule. So there is some routine to it. So again, just like you're saying with your wife, like we have a routine that we go through, and part of that is like that magnesium's going in, right? So that's not the reason, but it's like it's a cue, I think is what you just said, Stephen. It's a cue to like, we're now entering into this phase of our daily practice, which gets us into bed, which then gets us, hey, the sleep that we need, and hopefully the quality sleep that we're also need in order to get through our day and do all the stuff that we need to do.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think that men sort of undervalue the kind of wind down routine. I think men are more likely to be like, I'm just going to work right until the moment that I go crash in bed, or maybe eat dinner.
Down.
Yeah, maybe eat dinner. Maybe you're doing some stuff with the kids, or you're taking care of, looking at your schedule for the next day, thinking about what you got to do at work tomorrow. And then 5 minutes later, you go collapse in bed. And that's not going to lead to the same quality of sleep as having this kind of, this wind down or this runway to sleep, where once you hit the pillow, you're asleep, you're deeply asleep, and you stay asleep. Versus thinking about, you're tossing and turning, you're still kind of unwinding even though you're in bed. It's there is value in that ritual, in that routine, and I think men tend to neglect that more than maybe a woman would.
Yeah, and that can look really different. Like even like a thing that I know you're ritualistic about was like your evening walks, which is like part of your wind down. Like it can be the evening walks, it can be the
a lot of things.
Mindfulness, it can be whatever, it can be the sitting and chatting with your wife, like the things that are routine that like subconsciously teach you to downregulate.
Yeah, it's a psychological cue, as we've been talking about. That is, your brain works on those types of cues, and when you find that you get into that rhythm, all of a sudden, now when you get into bed, you're asleep right away. Versus in the past, you may have been tossing and turning. It still takes you another 20 minutes to actually downregulate and get to the point where you can fall asleep. You get in bed and you're out and you're done, because you really were done an hour ago. And this is just the closing of the day.
Yeah, so I think the last thing to bring up here is you've turned this all into a box ticking routine, right? I did the workout, or you are getting the protein, right? You are on some type of a program, right? You purchased that, or you've got a coach, or whatever the case. You bought it online, from somebody, and you're maybe even part of a group and whatnot. And that's all. Again, I tick that box. I'm getting into bed at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. or whatever, 11, and I'm in bed for 6-8 hours. You're ticking boxes and seemingly doing all the right things, and it's not working. So what do dudes do next? And it's not just dudes; it's women as well. Is they're reaching for answers outside of the fundamentals that we just covered.
Yeah.
There's always, it's got to be something else, because I'm doing all the things, because you're ticking a box, but you're not looking at the quality of what's inside the box that you're ticking, and some of the nuance that exists there. And again, there isn't a one size fits all for everybody. So we never try to do that. We never say, if you do this, then that. Like, if you do this, it may set you up well for this next thing, or the next thing's in line, but it's never a one size fits all. So again, when you're going down these boxes and you're ticking them, just because you're ticking boxes, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're hitting the things the way they need to be hit. And then the behavior mechanisms kick in with, it's got to be something else. What do I need to add on to the plate here in order to get that fat loss to happen faster, or get my recovery to happen faster, when you're not handling those other things right? And I mentioned one of them. It's like pre-workout, right? To get my energy up, or my get that boost that I need in order to get through the last half of my day, right? My workout at 5 o'clock or 3 p.m. or whatever it is. Or it's the extra cups of coffee in the morning to kind of pick me up, because I'm feeling lethargic, because the quality of the sleep isn't there, and you're not recovering from those workouts and everything else. It's reaching for things and blaming things, or looking to the grass on the other side of the fence for, why is it greener for that guy and not for me, because I'm doing all the same things he's doing, right? And that ends up we go right back through the list, right? It's like, I need to do carnivore because that's what that guy's doing.
Yeah.
Or I need to do that program. I'm going to program hop from the one that I'm on into the next one. Or, like I keep starting and stopping, so I just need to come out of the gate harder and do something harder. So I'm going to pick a workout, a gym, or a workout, place.
75 hard.
Yeah, it's like, here's the answer. Like, that's what I need to do, right? And then when you get into the sleep thing, it's like, well, there's got to be a supplement I can take or whatever. And again, some of the things we talk about, like hormone responses and things of this stuff, what can I be doing to speed this process up for me or to make the needle move in the direction I want it to go? I start blaming hormones, not realizing that maybe there is something to that. And I always encourage men, particularly, like, go get your blood work done, in your mid 30s, and then have it done, when you hit 40, and kind of track things and see where, for no other reason than your health, right? And to have sort of a tracking mechanism for that, and be aware of what's going on in your body as you are getting older. And yeah, hormones are a thing. They are important, right? And they dictate a lot of what happens within the body, but reaching for that and going, no, I'm ticking all these other boxes, so it has to be my testosterone. So I got to go get on HRT. How do you know that, right? Well, I had my blood test and my free testosterone was super low. Well, yeah, but why is it like that? Yes, there's a natural slowing down of that process as we get older. So yes, we can add that onto the things. But what are the other things that you're not doing, or that you are doing, that are impacting that? So again, reaching for the supplement, reaching for the hormone replacement therapy, reaching for the caffeine, reaching for the peptides, whatever else. All of those things have their place, and all of those things can add a certain amount of value, but no more value than the things that we've already talked about.
Well, and I think the final thing with that is, like we said, it's not just checking the boxes, but it's like the quality and the nuance around how you're checking those boxes. Like, are you just getting the job done, or are you actually executing the plan to an effective outcome? So
yeah, I think, so circling this all a bit, this has really been focused towards the dudes out there, and a lot of this, some of this has just come up for me in the last week, as I had like 3 conversations with guys that are like, and I know I'm not doing the work, but I had this question about HRT.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm happy to have the conversation with you about HRT, but look, dude,
should also be doing the work.
God, there's so much other
the quality of life and the other things. Yeah.
So much, and usually what happens in that conversation is there's fear associated with HRT, but they see dudes being successful that are also on HRT, right? And they're going, that must be the reason. Well, there's a lot of other things that could be going on there, and where you have this fear of what being on like a hormone replacement therapy will do to your health, right? The jury's kind of out on that, right? Like, it's probably more beneficial for men to be on that. Our testosterone levels are dropping, as men, particularly in this nation, at a very rapid rate. So there's a lot more evidence that supports the pro side of that than the con side of that. But that's where their heads go. It's like, I don't want to do anything. Yet you sleep 4 hours a night, right? You're in bed 4 hours a night. Who knows how much sleep you're getting?
I'll shake it off. Yeah. I'll rub some dirt on it.
I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah.
I just need to go harder. I need to join the CrossFit gym or whatever, so I can work out harder to look like that guy, right? And I need to onboard carnivore. Like, those are the things people will do, right? And then when they do that and that's not working for them long term, again, they're reaching for answers somewhere else. So I think wrapping it all up in this is, again, there is no one size fits all, but there are some basic fundamentals that you need to be looking at. And those fundamentals need to be applied similarly, but different than when you were 25, right? Your body isn't as resilient. You may not have the same hormone levels that you had. Your schedule doesn't allow the same type of activity, right? And that then interplays with how much recovery you get and how you're approaching, the problem that you're trying to solve here, which is the fat loss. And here's the end result of that. Once you get into this loop of all the things that we've talked about, and you're there for a long time, and you've reached for things, or you've gone deeper into that caloric deficit, or it's all red meat all the time, again, think people have successes at different levels with all of that different stuff. But the longer you stay in that pattern, the tougher it is for you to get out of that pattern and or accept that the quality of the things that you're doing within that pattern are not the quality they need to be in order for you to get your results. So, at the end of the day, dudes, over 40, there's again, I get it, and we're guilty of it. We're throwing a lot of information at you all the time, but it typically comes back to these basic things. And how do we know this? Again, like State Farm, like, we know a few things because we've seen a few things. And as a dude that's right at the very edge of 50 years old, trust me when I tell you, I know what it feels like to be in that loop and come and get out of it, right? And when you come out of it, you recognize, damn, like it wasn't a massive adjustment I had to make here. It was usually just twisting this knob just a little bit over here. And that came with awareness. So whether that was through, in some cases, blood testing for me, you know, at one point in my life, right? And now regular blood testing so I can see that I'm staying on track, to adjusting my programming and then taking a hard look at what was inside my programming and is this the right thing for me, right? And then the sleep thing and finding my routines or whatever, that takes practice and you're going to have to commit to it. But you can lose fat at 40, right?
Yeah.
You can lose fat at 50. You can look lean. You can be athletic. You can do things. It's just about how you're approaching it. And so take a look at how you're ticking boxes, because if it's just turned into a box ticking exercise, it's likely you're leaving a lot off the table.